I'm starting this story in January 2019. This isn't when it all began, but it's when I realized something was really wrong with me, and I was sinking deeper into depression. Normally, I can figure out why I'm feeling down and pull myself out of it, but this time was different. I couldn't find a clear reason, whether it was from past events or something going on in my life. Yet, I felt like I was falling into a dark hole with no explanation, and nothing I did seemed to help. In March, I went to see my doctor, who ran some tests. It turned out I was extremely low on vitamin D. I know it sounds strange that a vitamin could mess with my mood so badly, but vitamin D works like a hormone and affects things like your immune system and your emotions. One of the symptoms of low vitamin D is depression. Add that to negativity at work and at home, especially with my roommate, and it was a recipe for disaster. I thought, aha, that's the reason for all this. But I was wrong. Over the next few months, things just got worse. I've mentioned my roommate before. There was a noticeable change in him. He became more secretive and had frequent angry outbursts, sometimes even violent ones. His disabilities became excuses for not doing anything, including basic hygiene, though he somehow managed fine when going out. He got so messy that I stopped inviting friends over, not knowing what disaster we'd walk into. There was trash everywhere, and he even broke the furniture by throwing tantrums or just plopping down too hard. It felt like he had regressed years in his behavior. When I tried to read him, I felt this overwhelming darkness. I could tell something was deeply wrong. It got to the point where I thought I might need to contact his state guardian and suggest he be placed in an institution for his own safety and mine. His guardian and I searched for doctors who would take his insurance, and getting him to go was another battle. I know this doesn't sound paranormal, but it's important to understand what led up to the weird stuff. By November of that year, my depression was at its worst. Nothing brought me joy. My mind was consumed by dark thoughts and old personal issues. One afternoon, I was off work, relaxing in my pajamas with a soda trying to lift my spirits. Suddenly, I heard a voice coming from my closet. It was my father's voice. He was saying all the cruel things he used to when he was alive, telling me I was worthless, that no one loved me, not even God, and that I should just take my own life. As I listened, I found myself agreeing with him, thinking maybe he was right. It was like I was hearing him in the room with me, not just in my head. Then, something strange happened. It felt like a shock hit me in the chest. I covered my ears and looked at the closet, and I heard myself shout, "Shut up! You're dead and you can't hurt anyone anymore. You couldn't break me then, and you won't now." My body was trembling, but I suddenly felt stronger. The voice stopped, and there was silence. Wonderful silence. I don't know much, but I do know that when you start hearing voices telling you to harm yourself, it's time to get help. So I did. I went to get an evaluation. Being honest about everything was tough, but I knew I had to tell the whole truth if I wanted real help. They diagnosed me with PTSD and depression. Now I see Dr. G every week, and I'm slowly getting better. That dark hole isn't as deep anymore. In January 2020, things came to a head with my roommate. The negativity from him was so strong that just being around him made me feel sick. I had disturbing visions and dreams about him. I tried to block it out, thinking it was just my depression making things seem worse. I didn't want to believe what I was sensing, but I was right. The second week of January, the police came with a search warrant, and that was the end of my roommate. After that, my landlord was worried about my financial situation, but I told him I'd probably get another roommate after fixing up the apartment. He agreed, and I started working on repairs, even though my roommate's old room was such a mess that I didn't even want help cleaning it. Around this time, little paranormal things started happening again. Items would move on their own, but in helpful ways. For example, I had a wall rack holding coffee mugs that had been there for 18 years. One day I found it carefully laid on the counter along with the mugs. When I removed an old towel rack from the bathroom wall, I heard a male voice say, "Got any putty?" Another time, I wondered out loud if I should paint a cabinet, and the same voice said, "I would." While on a ladder, it wobbled, but then seemed to steady itself as a voice said, "Careful, I've got you." Even though it was a lot to handle, especially since I had been laid off due to COVID, these little encounters felt comforting. Occasionally, I'd feel a pat on my shoulder or hear footsteps. Once, I was frustrated about waiting for new furniture, and the voice joked, "How many chairs can you sit on at once?" It made me smile. By November, a year after hitting rock bottom, I started wondering if my father's voice hadn't pushed me to get help when I needed it the most. Maybe what I thought was evil was actually what saved me from myself.
I guess the thing you need to know for this story to make sense is that long ago, when the doctors gave my mother 3 months to live, two things happened at the same time. First, she made up her mind to prove them wrong, and second, she became very focused on her songs. By her songs, I don't mean she wrote them or had any legal rights to them. They were just songs no one else sang anymore. Most of them were so old, they were from before radio even existed. Some were upbeat and fun, others were sad or dramatic, and some were just silly but fun to sing. Most were in English, but a few were in Gaelic. As she got weaker, she became convinced that when she died, the songs would die too, even though we kids had heard them our whole lives. I'm one of 8 kids, and why she chose me to learn all the songs is beyond me. The others were quite musical, just like our parents. They all had that gift that brought life to music, making it more than just notes and rhythms. My 3 sisters were all sopranos like my mother, and 3 of my brothers were tenors. My oldest brother had an impressive range. He could hit low notes or go as high as any soprano. Me? I was, at best, a low alto, and compared to them, it felt like I was singing in a totally different key, something way off. Still, Mom wanted me to learn the songs, so that's what I did. On days when she felt good, we'd sing together as a duet, and if it was a really good day, she'd play the piano too. On bad days, when she was in too much pain, I'd sit by her bed and sing while she corrected me if I missed a note or got a word wrong. It mattered so much to her, which made it matter to me. My mother lived past the 3 months the doctors gave her, though she never got better. She just wouldn't give up, nor would she let me stop singing. Even after I left home at 16, when I would call her from a payphone, she'd ask me to sing her a song. Funny thing about that, there I'd be, standing at a payphone, the kind without a booth, singing with tears in my eyes, and almost every time someone would give me a little money. Never much, but just enough to let me keep talking a bit longer. Poor Mom had no idea I was living on the streets back then. She thought I was staying with a friend. My dad had lied to her, and I let it be. Sometimes lies are necessary, but enough about that. Mom passed away in 1986, and by then I was married with a son and another baby on the way, though I wasn't showing yet. I had managed to make peace with my dad over the years, just so I could see Mom in her last days. Whenever we visited, she'd always ask me to sing her a song or two, her choice. I always felt like I was being tested. But no one was more surprised than me when, at her funeral, my dad asked me to sing for her one last time. He'd always called my singing necessary noise that made your mother happy. I sang the song the way she taught me, not because I was afraid the song would be forgotten, but because it was my dad's favourite. When they were dating, Mum had learned the Irish version of the song as a surprise for him, since he could only sing it in English. He couldn't quite get the Irish accent or roll his R's. But as her illness got worse, she couldn't hold the notes anymore, so no one had heard it in our family for a long time. She hoped that, after she was gone, the song would remind my dad that she had always loved him, and asked me to sing it for him now and then. When he asked me to sing at the funeral, I thought I heard Mum tell me to sing that song. I almost swear I did. Maybe it was just my emotions or the wind playing tricks. I started singing, and as I closed my eyes, I could feel everyone staring at me. But then I heard my mother's high, clear voice, just like before she got sick, helping me hit the notes I'd never been able to reach. When I finished, people were whispering, "Did you see that?" Or she sounded just like her mother. My dad just stared at me or maybe passed me. At the reception, I finally asked my oldest sisters, the twins, "See what?" I have no explanation for what they told me, but they swore they saw Mom standing next to me, singing along with me. I had a dog which passed away having parvovirus. My current dog is a second one. I couldn't think of another name, so I named her the same name as the previous one, Zelephine. They looked like twins but came to me in different timing. Same brown coat, same amazing brown eyes, but slightly more playful and talkative. So last night I woke up hearing barking of Zelephine. By the kitchen, I thought I saw her dashing out, but I lost sight of her. Then I saw Zelephine around the entrance, looking up the door, and turned back and looked at me. I thought she was being a watchdog barking at somebody behind the door. Zelephine seemed to be a little excited. She was aiming at something at the direction of the kitchen. I looked back to the kitchen and saw a shadow, small shadow like the size of a dog. I thought back when I saw the Zelephine like something dashing out of the kitchen. Zelephine seemed to know that something. I looked through the peeking hole of my front door to check if there is someone. Am I glad to know that there is no one? So I searched around the house to see what had came in. Is it a stray dog or a small raccoon? There is nothing, and so I went back to my room. Few minutes later, Zelephine started to touch something with her paws and bark again. I sneaked down this time and found that Zelephine was actually trying to touch something and bark at a spot where I used to set up my first dog's bed. Zelephine was actually talking to something, I thought at that moment. I then just sat on the ground watching Zelephine play with my old dog in hope I might catch a glimpse of my old companion one last time like a crazy person.